Welcome to the recording of the second forum, Potential of Sustainable Building Materials and Construction Methods for Existing Buildings and Energy Efficient Refurbishment. This forum was part of the natureplus Conference 2022, Rethink Building. Thank you for watching.
So I guess we are complete. And this will be the English part of this conference. Yes, welcome back after lunch. I hope you enjoyed it. And welcome to the part of the potential of sustainable building materials and building materials and the way of building sustainably for existing buildings and for energy efficient conversions. So we have quite some presentations this afternoon, and we have some people here digitally with us. Welcome from my side. I see at least 8 persons that are dialed in digitally, and we have some support here. So if there are questions, because every presentation this afternoon will also have a question and answers session after it, then please write your questions to the chat and they will be forwarded to me and we will discuss them here in the room. So we have 4 speakers this afternoon, and really this is the invitation also to ask questions, to get into discussion and to really dive deeper into all those topics. This is what this afternoon is for. And the first speaker I want to welcome on stage is Professor Dr. Anupama Kundoo. She was born in India, and she was studying architecture at the Sir J.J. College of Architecture of the University of Bombay. She got a scholarship from a foundation for her PhD about urban eco-community, the design and analysis for sustainability. And she was working in India as an architect and has investigated in different intercultural contexts in the whole world. I'm speaking about Berlin, London, New York, Brisbane, Venice, and Barcelona. And as you can see, she is a very, very experienced person in this area full of sustainable building. And she has also investigated in materials, has made a lot of experiments, especially in her work as a professor now. And so I welcome her on stage, and we're very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much. So thank you for this introduction, and I look forward to interacting with you all. What I would like to share, let me just check the time, 30 minutes or?
Yes, it's like 25 minutes
going
plus.
out.
Yes.
Okay. So feel free to.
Okay.
So I would like to talk about the rethink reality. I would like to approach the topic. Before talking about sustainability, I would like to talk about what I see as the approach to materiality post-industrialization, and to just look where perhaps humanity has created habits, new post-industrial habits, that maybe it has a lot to do with if we can undo some of them, if we can undo some of the habits that don't serve us anymore. So I would like to approach this topic from that point of view. And when I talk about materials, I would love, because one thing we do know is post-industrial times, our materiality habits have created all these environmental, social, and economic imbalances. So we start talking about sustainability because of the imbalances we ourselves are actually creating. It's not like a phenomenon that happened from outside and now we have to find a cure, like COVID or tsunami. It's nothing like that. It's a way we used to always live since Homo sapiens, since we started, Homo sapiens started building with manufactured material. That was 3,800 years ago when we discovered that fire can make mud into brick. That was our first building material. And then we were still living in sync with each other and our environment until and unless in the last 100 something years, very recently, we started going overboard because we were able to do more than the human scale normally does. We were able to, instead of fishing with our hands, we were able to send larger and larger ships into deeper and deeper areas to catch the fish in advance and can them to be eaten up to 10 years later, or things like that. We created habits of scale and other habits which I really want to put in question. So because we keep talking about resources being finite, natural resources and materials, we keep saying it's finite. But the human resources are not finite, is what I want to say. And if we were to use more human resources to build a mere thing like our habitat, which we all the animals who need shelter are doing every day. We don't need, it was not a rocket science to build habitat. Every bird and bee are routinely creating habitat and they are living in that habitat and it is not troubling anybody beyond their lives. But in our case, our habitat has taken on a huge dimension of problem we are creating. Now I am talking about when I'm going to, in the rest of the lecture, talk about rethinking some of our material habits, I want us to look at it from the lens of non-material things. In our generation, and as a professor, I see how we are talking about material in the schools. We're talking about good material, bad material, as if the material themselves did something to become a good person or a bad person, or to be guilty of its energy properties, which it didn't do anything. It is just part of the earth. Whether it is wood that grew on the earth or a material that was dug out of the earth, the material is innocent. But the human interacted with the material in a not so innocent way, maybe, because earlier they used their own human energy to dig, to use not only the human resource of time, they used the time, humans used brains, humans used muscles, humans used energy, and humans used all the human resources that if we continue to use them, we become clever, we become more strong, we become ingenious, we evolve as a human society. So that should not be a problem. The problem is when human resources are not being discussed in the discussion of natural resources. So I would like to start with one human resource, which is time. How we spend our time, what we do, the 8 hours a day we go to work in the name of work. Sometimes if we don't work, maybe it's better for some people, isn't it? We know that. It's good for the person who doesn't like his job. It's good for the ones who became a victim of the fact that other people worked. Now we have to buy those things, what they produced, and so on. Then when they work, they're producing pollution also. And not everything we are doing is benign. So the problem of materiality, for me, is a problem of the human resource and not about materials. And this is my contribution today. And I want to explain, when you look at architecture over time, in all old civilizations, I come from one of them, the luxury of the architecture that was produced had to do with how the human hand and mind engaged with the material. The material didn't have to be fancy on its own. We built with stone where there was stone. We built with earth where there was earth. We built with ice if that's only what we had. And that's how the human beings became clever. And nowadays, so with stone, you could build simple things or you could build more fancy things, if it's a palace or if it's important for the collective memory, for the collective space. So it's the quality of engagement that goes into it that made habitat. Today, all over the world, we have a habitat that is creating, as we spoke, not only environmental challenges, they are creating unaffordability of the type of habitat created. We are not questioning the habitat we are creating. We are just questioning, if I created this, it is so expensive for others, so now they are homeless. We are not questioning that maybe what we are doing is so out of the line. We are assuming that this one product should suddenly fit all. Whether it is all clothes has to be SML, all houses has to be ABC, everything has to be one of the produced options, or you don't fit. And nobody fits in the standard, actually. And yet it is used, whether you're in Singapore, whether you're in Frankfurt, whether you're in Florida, whether it's hot and humid, and it's cold, no matter what it is, this is what we produced. Everyone has to swallow it and use it. And therefore, it comes at an enormous price that the rest of the world who cannot afford that have to live what we call is a slum. But they are actually, if you look at it, it is all man-made construct. It's a man-made way of imposing a thing which is not a standard as a standard. And on top of it, we are backing it by building codes so that even those who are free, that they fall in the prison of the building codes. So these post-industrial codes are something that need evaluation. And what is also worrying is that all the rich building tradition that each and every country has culturally, traditionally, like if you built with mud in Germany, with the Fachwerk, today it will not be possible. They will say it's not in the codes. But why? Did the gravity change? Is the gravity different for Germans than for Indians? No, nothing changed. Why is the code somewhere? So yes, the code was there to protect that because they were over standardizing, there has to be codes. But that doesn't mean that time-tested things should not be brought into the code. And nobody's thinking about basic things. And I love that this building says to question everything. I think we should have the time to question everything. Otherwise, we are creating robots and we are becoming like robots ourselves and not allowed to question anything. And we know something is bad and we are going on doing it. Even when I started 30 years ago, we were doing the sustainability discussion. We thought that people didn't know how to do sustainability. Today, I don't know what to say when I come to a lecture because we know everything and we are still doing it. So then what do we do? So this is our dilemma. And what I'm concerned with now is all the knowledge, like take this brick. The same brick was able to build huge castles, look at Notre Dame. It can build, look at the Dome, look at Hagia Sophia. You can build any amount. If you go and look at of span or look at the heights we have built in the early New York buildings. If you look at Guastavino's work, what a brick was able to do. And today, a brick is only allowed everywhere to be infilled and then to plaster it, as if it is a junky material that should only not even allowed to carry any weight. So these are the habits. When we look at them, it means that humans have achieved some intelligence, and for some reason, we are forced to be dumber than we are in the way we apply things. So that's what I want to ask. And we are in such a hurry to work and produce that I ask often, when I began my practice, I was asking myself, what is the point of doing efficiently things that need not be done at all? Maybe like during COVID, we saw that the damage got less. We didn't go to work, nothing happened. I mean, we got sick, that there are many bad things that happen. But a lot of bad things didn't happen because we just were not allowed to do certain things. So that should make us think about, it's also funny actually, if you look how we are taking something so serious and finding out that it was not at all important. So let's be light about it and drop all the baggage is what I would say. So I will just give an example now. I think I've used up my half an hour in the introduction. No, because I'm not such a big fan of the prepared speeches because I like to be here and meet people and interact naturally. So when the time is up, we'll stop. Yeah, just so these are some. When I started my practice, I graduated from school. We already knew that there was an environmental crisis. This was in 1989. So we know how long ago that was. And I took the time to just to think before I act and not to work in offices, not to do jobs where I felt it is not good for me, for them, for no one, and only for the sake of paying my rent. No. I rather live more humble, more simple. So while I downgraded my standard, my aspiration was very high. And I started the adventure of what to do with the rest of my life. And through there, I started observing, like, if I just take the material of brick, and like this, I studied many materials. I started looking at how brick is produced. And when we look at a production from an industrial catalog and look at material, how to be sustainable and rethink materiality, I'm talking about the very first question begins, how is the material even sourced? From where is the clay? What is the quantity? Sometimes I realize it's the quantity that's important, not just that whether X is a good or a bad thing. It depends how much of it are you doing and how much is within the human scale or not, etc. So a lot of reflection, but I started realizing that no matter which material is produced, literally all materials, the materials are deeply affected by the territory from where it is sourced. So in India, for example, the clay bricks that are made by hand, they are the same people who are actually rice farmers. In some season where the clay collects, they will make bricks. In some other season, they are growing these kind of plants to eventually take them as fuel. So it's a kind of reforestation. And then with the wood, not all the tree cut, but the thinnings, which has to be always cut when you create a forest, that is used. So there is a cycle. Similarly, in lime making, there is a cycle of how humans are doing many different jobs in old civilizations to produce a product. A farmer is not, the whole cost of the rice is not 8 hours that he worked every day. Otherwise, the rice is too expensive. The same guy is also making bricks, is also doing farmer. There's a season, and there are sometimes he's doing this, sometimes he's doing that. And through all the activity, the economy sustains and the brick is available at the cost at which it is available. And I realized that if you remove, such as this lime makers, if you remove from the brick makers also, if you decide to use a factory brick or a cement, Portland cement, although this lime exists, these entire communities are wiped out overnight because we got our architecture degrees and we are taught to prescribe a standard bag of cement as opposed to what is lying around. So I think because we don't know how to use what is lying around in abundance and in surplus, because why? It takes time to use it. That's what I'm talking about, time as a resource. We would rather, we say, no, we have no time. Because in the West, they created a slogan, time is money. I really question this slogan. Time is our whole life. It's not time is money. It's wrong to think that. In this society, time costs money. Suppose I help somebody for an hour, it costs that money. But that doesn't mean I should stop. Like a massage costs 65 euros. But if I give my daughter a massage in the evening, and whether we are watching TV or something, it costs nothing. But in our mind, we start thinking that now I can't work in my own house because it costs 250. Whenever I design anything in Germany, they say, no, this is too teuer. Kann keiner bezahlen. I said, yes, doch reicht. When we can pay this, it's not possible that you cannot pay. You might find 2 or 3 hours to do the little work. It's not a burden to work. It's a joy to work if you like your work. So all these notions I want to question. I questioned it in my life and I found out that if you think about time as the only resource you always have, whether you're rich or poor, you all have 24 hours we all have the same. We are equal on that point. And if we use it for what we believe, you can create things. And now I'll just show some architecture that I created by using human resources more than natural resources. My belief is the more you use your brain, your time, your muscle, your care, your love, your attention, your passion, all that human resources, they are all infinite and they generate incredible energy in others, and you can produce things you think were not affordable. And as a byproduct, you save natural resources, because if somebody gives me 2 times the time to think for the design, will it be worse or better? And will I not think how to use less wood than the amount, the first idea was so much, but if I calculate carefully, and so do I give my engineer the time to do so, they will say, actually, you need only this. And it will mean more extra work for me. I have to draw again. But better to pay a few hours to the source than to pay a lot of work and not liking the product in the end. So there are some, these are people who are, still there are communities in the rest of the world, the non-industrial world, who produce things, procure material and do a lot of things by hand. And I used to try to use that to produce very intelligent, self-supporting construction systems and show the skill. So for luxury projects like shops, etc., I think the real luxury is one where it's not the material like gold only that is luxury. It's the amount of time a person put in it makes it luxurious. If I weave a cotton more carefully, it will look luxurious. It's a guarantee. The cotton may be simple. It doesn't have to be silk to look luxurious or to feel that is worthy and to celebrate the work of humans. So through this, I started producing architecture that at the same time was highly engineered, like with ceramic, to be able to stack intelligently and produce roofing systems. Why? Because the potters community, they are getting sidelined and they don't know, they're losing their livelihood due to urbanization. Nobody wants to have clay pots, and But I thought if we can make building products out of the skills that we have in the society, it's okay if we don't use pots as pots anymore, but we can make roofs with what we have, with the knowledge that already exists, to reinvent it and take the time to reinvent it and produce very highly insulated ceilings to give secure employment, improve local economy, to produce material not just in factories, because now we think anything made must be in a factory. For hundreds of years they were making in the field. It costs nothing to just make. Of course, our standards may not allow that they are working outside, but they are actually more healthy like that, to be not in a stuffy factory. They are outside their homes, doing it like a artisan work, and we are firing them with coconut shells and so on. In the green building standards of the West, they don't make a differentiation when they say a brick uses XYZ kilojoules. They don't say whether it is coal or it is coconut shell. For them, it's scheißegal. I shouldn't say this word, but in the courts, it's like, it doesn't matter. They are interested in the quantity, never the quality. I really find it troubling, but it makes a big difference from where are you taking the fuel. So these are things should be seen holistically. And so with this kind of collaborations with masons, craftspeople, we produce some kind of architecture, and it's infinite what we can still do. And many people call it vernacular architecture because it looks like these colors that we're used to, but actually these are highly engineered solutions. And I have even used these are the traditional pots which nobody buys anymore, but the craftsmen still make it out of tradition, rice cooking, like paella kind of thing, So there's a rice dish for it. So I started using them as filler slab, like a lost shuttering, like a Verlorene Schalung for the, concrete. To make concrete, use about 30% of the steel that it would be normally using. So there's so many kind of things possible once you decide that we are not, if a modern solution is not good enough, we are not going to use it. If you just allow yourself to think for 1 or 2 more weeks in the design, what can we do? Each day, actually, we find ideas, what could be done, and then we follow it up by experiments. So this is some of the architecture that I produced. But also, in the meantime, I myself lived very simply, because this is how, as I told you, I had to reduce my costs of life. And the more I gave up, the less I became free, the less I needed, and the more I liberated actually my time. Because if you're spending 60% of your salary on a rent or a paying back a bank, something is wrong in that whole calculation. But many times we find it inconvenient to question the whole thing, because we think we have to solve the whole world problem. I thought, let me just solve my own affordability problem and then go from there one by one. And then I applied some of the successful strategy to other projects. But I stayed in a way, very many Indian, like very simple settlements, how they stay. But I had a motorbike, which cost more than the house maybe. I had a solar panel also. Those were my 2 expensive high-tech things. But what I also learned by spending 10 years living like this, with only natural materials, I realized that, you know, a coconut thatch or a round wood, I realized new things about, when I'm talking about time as a resource. If you think about why we use rectangle sections, of timber, the difference between a rectangle section and a round timber, the reason we do it is so that we can standardize, and the person who drew the piece does not have to think like the old carpenter, how is it shaped, how must it be. So it's easier for the one who's thinking. But at what cost? Instead of a 3-year-old wood, I need a 25-year-old wood so I can cut it like this. I started realizing this thing only after living, I have to say. Because once you start, you discover how, because you just believe, you think that everybody's doing it, can't be that wrong. There must be a good reason, but sometimes it is just that the masses using a thing, if masses are saying something, it doesn't mean it's true. We have to question everything. And so I started questioning, and I still question, and I find out in which situation is this better, in which situation is that better. But in any case, we do know one thing, that a whole round wood is stronger than a rectangle wood. We know that. And we know also that to cut away so much pieces, just for making equal standard sizes, maybe in today's time, it makes wood less realistic to use. Whereas if I can go for some other techniques like that, we can, what I mean to say is we can revisit traditional techniques and vernacular techniques. We can continue research on them to find new value in them, to look at it with new eyes after we have faced the crisis that came out of the post-industrial habits. And mostly we are not changing those habits, not because of the lack of knowledge, but because of the lack of, we are just feeling it will be outside our comfort zone. And that is too little a reason to not consider something seriously. So I have to just go a bit faster, because I've wandered in unexpected directions. But I started using certain techniques. I've investigated all kinds of materials that I've come across, and I've done some, like this is an urban eco community, and I put the stress on the word urban. It's a co-housing, because I think the future has to be urban so that we can reduce the walkable, reduce distances, reduce sprawl so that cities become walkable and infrastructure is efficient and so on. But even these, you see, these are other terracotta roofs that you will find that are insulated, and they are partly prefabricated. And so there's a whole lot of things I did with those. One of the materials I have been researching is called ferrocement, which is, I would say, a more eco version of cement concrete. Because, I mean, not that you can, in the engineering properties are very different, but the fact is that in ferrocement, you use thin mesh instead of thick steel, you can't do, they have different engineering properties, so you can't just replace one with another. But I have been following up on the work of Nervi and a few others who have made, using the form by using folded plates or bending and so on, making the form contribute to the strength, and therefore reducing the weight of cement by making it very light. So, this is a whole area of investigation, cement, ferrocement, using normal mesh, but also trying out natural meshes. I know there's a lot of research being done on textile as reinforcement and glass fiber and carbon fiber and so on. We have collaborated with Mike Schleich on some portion of this research too. And I have a couple of ideas. One is a modular housing system where colors are also embedded into the cement mix. Here you see some of that. And
2 more minutes, because then we will have the Q&A session.
Okay, yeah. So here are some of those kind of things being exhibited and collaborations being done. This is Mike Schleich's labor, where we have done some load testing, and we've been using this also for sanitation, toilets, and so on. As well as here you see these are not factory fabricated, but using origami crease patterns to be able to cast, because it's only these ferrocement materials are only 2.5 centimeters thick or less, and they can be cast on, I think, on paper or recycled carton, because now we're using so much of this with Amazon. So this is one of the experiments that we have been doing also, how to use folded forms and to apply very thin mesh and convert that into shelter. So this is I will end with this. Yeah. These are some of the new material palette. Okay, and the things that I haven't shown you, which I had put the slides about, are about using urban waste back into architecture and recognizing architecture's potential to permanently absorb waste as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This
has been actually exhibited at the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art when they did a solo show of my work. So that's not there anymore. But I have an atelier where some of it is exhibited. Pastorstraße 50.
Here in Berlin.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm struggling with where to store all this. My work went into the art, and now I have to, it's got in the art scene, and now I have to find support to store all of this for myself.
Wow.
So it's now in Berlin.
So inspiring. Thank you so much.
You.
And I'm pretty sure everyone has some ideas and questions about it. Who wants to ask something? Who has an impulse on what we just saw?
I'm just going to move some slides.
Yes.
While you all are thinking.
That makes things very interesting as well. Yes, please.
If you could go back a few slides, I was wondering where the colors are coming from you put into
the colors actually are like all colors come from. They are just pigments. Like for example, red would come from ferrous content from which a pigment would be made. So some of those on that table are actually, some of these pigments are Indian, but some of them are Italian, and a few of the very bright ones, the bright pink, is actually from DDR times in Germany.
Wow.
We found a whole bunch of those, and yeah. The thing is, in Germany, they dilute it a lot because, of the way they do it. When they color concrete, they color the whole concrete. In India, we like intense colors, but we do more like stucco. So we put the color. We are not so afraid of colors in India, so we tend to enjoy them. So we make we do it a little bit on top of the cement piece as a thin layer. I do it so that the cement becomes smooth like stucco, like when you polish it and wax it. it becomes easy to use it without having to tile with something else. But the pigments you can get them everywhere. But each pigment has a different source.
And they're all natural and are woven.
Not always natural. See, that's the thing. So again, they would be very color specific, which minerals are behind. And there are each source of like a blue would come from indigo perhaps, but others would come, they would have different sources. And they're not always good for health.
More questions?
The cement that you use is you call it again
Ferro cement.
Ferro.
Ferro cement is a word that was coined. I think the origins. It was used by Navy for the first time. It used to be used for boat building originally, and because concrete has a problem that the bigger the span, the more the weight of concrete, and it's almost carrying only its self weight after a certain span. So Nervi had tried in his very large spaces to make the slab lighter by using mesh instead of steel and making them very thin. So, but ferro cement has always been around as a material. It was perhaps a forerunner to even steel concrete. But because it requires more knowledge to use it, as usual, it got left behind. Like Lehmbau and everything, we need to know specifically how to use. So for ferro cement, you have to calculate each and every form, how would it be? So because we are an age where we prefer the standard ready thing, we, I think, tend to give away further research on that kind of materials. That's why ferro cement, like mud, has gone out of use.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. You have criticized standards very fundamentally, and natureplus as a standard setting institution has very much relationship to standards. And on the other hand, you have to say that standards give trust, kind of trust, because you have made it following a standard, and so you should know what are the properties of this material. And so I understand quite well that if you have enough time and can learn from your own failures, so you come at a certain time, you come to kind of standardized product. But isn't it easier to start with a standard and to say, okay, the product must have these or that properties?
I think it is easier, but I don't think it's better. I think it is easier, and that's why we have it like that. I think that, and regarding trust, I think no matter trust, how much ever scientific things, look at the vaccine discussion. It's not like people just trust. Trust and mistrust is another philosophical discussion. I think people trust because they want to trust or not, and people trust also wrong things or the other way around. So I think I totally, on the other hand, I did not mean to criticize that there should be standards at all. And I just mean to criticize that blind adherence to standards post-industrial. There has been agenda of, see, for instance, if somebody wants to come up with a new product post-industrial, they will do all the work and pay for it and work hard and make even a polluting vehicle will have to do that. And there are a lot of people who do the hard work and make that be understood and delivered. But what I'm saying is that sadly, all that we produced pre-industrially, which were also ingenious, because we didn't bother to do the same amount of work to make it a standard, then in today's culture, people are not even knowing that it exists. And we've created a culture where we go ready-made shopping to only the big stores where you have only that. But meanwhile, vegetables and fruits in small quantities, or wine that is well produced, but there are only 300 bottles this year, they will never find their way into the market, is what I'm questioning. And I'm questioning that if something can be used like a very well-known industrial wine, because they can supply minimum that many thousands, otherwise the chefs today will not risk, because they say, no, my client, in fact, the chef has actually told me, my client doesn't know nowadays, they don't know about wine, so they know this label, so we have, even though I know better and you know better, we will have to give this wine, because all the big airlines and they keep using that, and so people trust that. We all know there are better wines, but they are not coming in a quantity that it will ever afford. They will not afford to do that. So I have lived many, many years of my life before I came to the Western way of operating. So I know there is a whole other life possible. And therefore, I would like something in between the two extremes of the Eastern way of not doing and the Western way of only believing what you created. My son asked me a question, Mommy, are you sure that science is not religious? That's what I want to end with, because
That's very good.
He's finding, because he keeps going between India and Germany, and he is half also, so he's wondering whether science is not as dogmatic many times, and their first assumptions, were they scientific? Often the first assumption is not tested and everything above it is. So I just want to talk freely about the questions that haunt me. So I'm not making a blanket negative statement against course, especially as a professor. And I work very hard to test my own things. And I know how hard it is when nobody supports me to test the thing which is not commercially viable. I have to do it. And that's the struggle. And I'm on the contrary appealing for whoever's listening to please help to test all other, if you're truly scientific, please test all options, not only the one you prefer and you want to make it perform well in the end. We all know how to tweak our results. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
I also encourage the audience online to ask some questions in the next session. The next speaker is Max Drath. He studied architecture in Lübeck first, and he finished it with the städtebauliche Projekt Alsterküste. After that, he made his Diplom-Ingenieur in Architecture and Stadtplanung and in Hamburg, and also a Master of Science in Architecture and Environment. He is now more than 4 years at Aveco de Bond as a specialist for sustainable, circular-oriented and healthy building. On top of that, he is a member at the Architect for Future Netherlands. Welcome on stage, Max Drath.
Thank you for the introduction, and thanks that I speak today here as a German architect living in the Netherlands and doing it in English. So nice to be here. I'm working since 4 years by Aveco de Bond. It's a big construction company or engineering company. I started there a few years ago to set up how we can use nature materials and introduce it in the Netherlands, because in the Netherlands building section works on another way than in Germany or Belgium. That because the architect is not the central person to build a house, it's the building company. So the architect is more for to make visual from outside, and the whole construction what you make it's making by the building company. And in the last since years 50, they started to make more and more only use materials like concrete, like bricks or steel, and a little bit the knowledge that you can also use other materials. We lost a little bit, and we tried by our Kundoo with a team from 30 people at the moment to change it a little bit more, to come back. So they are built also in the Netherlands earlier. Oh yeah, I start most time my presentations with a special guest with Mother Earth, because I like her information about that she wants that we can stay here on the planet, but it's not her choice, it's our choice. If we want to stay, we are welcome. But I like introducing about it.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years. 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other, your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
I told you about RE.THINK and we think that we have to change something. We have not to change everything on materials, but some materials we have to think about to make it better for the nature. If you need nature materials like concrete or something like this, then use it. But looking for the cement, I have a nice product I found together with a group of people. They use bacteria in concrete without cement, and the bacteria making the combination, but it's not allowed at the moment to make it construction beton concrete. So they are we have to go more that we can change the cement, because the cement costs a lot of energy to make it. We are started to use so much more we started Netherlands in my home. We try to start to use so much materials from nature, just a lot of wood, something like that, but we are looking also if you don't need a lot of wood for construction, then use do it also that you don't use too much wood because we can't change over to all buildings are wood, from wood because so much wood we don't have. If you change it in the Netherlands, we have 14 times the Netherlands. Yeah, we need it to produce the wood, so it's not possible for the Netherlands. Here a little bit about us. So I told you with 30 sustainable consultants, we try to help 400 engineers and other in the building sector to help 16,000 working people outside by the building companies from Professorins, where we are part from. It's the second biggest building company in the Netherlands. So, but we are working also from Aveco de Bond for all other building companies in the Netherlands, so not only for Professor. Here are some projects, so I think I'm going to how we try to change it. At the moment, the building sector is that you have a line process. So someone is beginning to make a picture from a building, but don't think about how to build it. So on another way, as architects in Germany, they are making a picture and think about how to make it. But in the Netherlands, we have two kinds of architects. We have an architect only for design at the beginning, and we have an architect who have to build them together with the building company, and they are working at the building company. So and we are thinking we have to don't do it longer in a line to come there to use more bio-based materials and also good materials for the nature. We started 4 years ago that we are saying we have to put all people they build together from the beginning on a table. We knew it's a circular table, so they together from the beginning to the end have to plan the building together. So they need them in a line. In a line, you get also a problem. That is why we started it. That at the deadline, there you have a concentration, and then you found the mistakes you did on the beginning because you're not working together. If we change it, then this group sitting there, and to the deadline, we get all our goals where we want to build a house. So this is to change the process here at the moment in the Netherlands. And what I say over the building companies and a little bit lost the knowledge about bio-based. This is what we are doing in the Netherlands. I say 80%, 90%. After the Second World War, they started only to build. It was we needed a lot of flats really fast, but in the Netherlands they lost the knowledge to build with other materials than concrete, steel, and bricks. So they knew it traditional buildings. I knew it not the traditional materials to build with concrete and steel. I often said, these are for me buildings. They are in Amsterdam 400 years old. This is the tradition of buildings, not what they with concrete did. And this old houses, 400 years old, also completely circular, and we can reuse it if we want it, but it's monumental, so it's not possible to reuse it. But it's bricks together with lime mortar, and so we can all bricks use again. So because with concrete mortar, it's not possible to use of the cement mortar. It's not possible to take bricks from side and use it again. So they know it after the Second World War in all over Europe. We take the lime mortar off from the bricks and build our stones again. So it is possible. But also we have really old houses, and this is also something where I want to say these buildings are all diffusie open or vapor open construction with the construction regulate also the humidity water in the air. Humidity regulation and heating regulation. So it's we can use the old materials. They are all diffusely open buildings, and the old architects know to use it principle from the nature. But now we have so much new materials, bio-based insulation materials, bio-based plates, and we can now also renovate old buildings from inside without getting problems with scrimmage or something like this. This is one project I worked with a group artists together to show and a lot of other consultants and we want to show that bio-based materials from the future. This, there are so much possibilities to use other plants we don't use today, and this outside it's from mushrooms, it's mycelium, and this one was on the Dutch Design Week, and then we transported to another place and back to another place. Now it's on Floriade, and they don't change the panels. Water, it's not, how to say, it's the same panel since 2019, and it stays outside. So, but it's not a big production at the moment, so we can't use it in the buildings company. But this is what we are trying by Bond, together with the makers from this small startups, to scale it up and use it with big building companies. To use this materials, you can mycelium. You can use some. We are using now form products from oil, as an example. This second project, and I give now a short speech on Lucas de Man, the director from the Kunstenaar organization, and I will introduce the pavilion.
Welcome at the installation The Explosive Field Beyond Building. It's an exhibition in the shape of a house, and it contains more than 100 bio-based materials, and we divided them into a few rooms with nature teams. The most important ambition for me as designer was to take the visitors in this beautiful house, that visitors feel that this also can be their house, their lifestyle.
It's only a short film. If you want to know more about this materials, then you can find by the Explosive View, but also on your page, or Sissy. On your page is also information about all the materials.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. On the biobasebouwen.nl.
I will a little bit introduce some materials from this pavilion because yeah, I heard there are some colors, blue or other colors, so they are not every time repeat. As a building biologist, I'm looking also how to make also colors on a bio-based production. And we have here some colors. We go one further. If you're looking at this material in the blue one, this is some plate for outside, and the color is made by blue algae. Something what we don't want to have in our waters, but if you take it out, you can make a really nice blue color. So this is what is making the smaller startups. Yeah, but they try to use everything what we found in the nature, also something what we don't want to find in the nature, and use it in products. And we have plates from tomato plants and paprika, and making a plate where you can use in place of a wood plate. So and they get the plants for nothing because the big companies in the Netherlands they have to pay for it. That they making it put it throw it away, and they can pick up it for nothing because the company don't have to pay. In the future, maybe they would they have to speak about that it's a product, and you can also ask something for it. But at the moment, there are a lot of things also on fields where food for food they are making for us, but they also make food for cows and something like this, and the rest they throw away. So and we are looking there how we can use all these materials in the circular economy, but also in the bio-based economy, everything together with the producer, the maker, and the building company. They are a new business plan from to make a new business plan. But what is important also in the Netherlands is also the normal products. They don't know, and they don't know how to work with the normal products. So they don't know what fiber plate. They don't know that you can use a screw to build with it. So they only use in the most times mineral wool from stain or from glass, or they use foam products, but no wood isolation or hemp isolation or something like this. And this is because they don't know how to. And this is something also we are from a bigger one try every time we are going to the building companies from investors, bringing this. This is one of the boxes I take every time with me to show here. Look at it. These are normal materials, and you can use a clay plate. You can also. It's the same as a gypsum plate. It's the same to work, and it's in the West. It's also to work with this material is PV, also for production from the buildings. So, but what we also do, and this is I heard today earlier upstairs. We are looking on the whole life cycle by building. Also, this is only an example for the life cycle from production from the materials. top the building, but by we are looking also in the 50 years using how much you have to change material, how much energy costed, and so also we have a system, if you will, to build a house in the Netherlands, then you have to show this one before you start. You can start to build. If you want, the government asks you to give a price for 1 square meter, but the price for the square meter is the impact for the nature. So this is we must have to show it before you can start to build. The only thing at the moment why they are not using so much bio-based materials by this system in the Netherlands is because they have an own system from environmental product declarations, LCA's, and the whole platform in Europe are not allowed to use. So the most bio-based materials are not on the database. So this is the problem at the moment. Yeah, we have to work on that. We can all environmental product declarations also take in this database to so you get an impact from your house to see for the nature, and then you are allowed. It have to be per square meter, not higher than at the moment 0.8 euros per square meter totally, and they will to raise up, bring it down to 0.4 or 0.3 in the next 5 years. So there was only concrete. It's not possible to reach 0.4 in this system. But so we need the bio-based materials inside, and also a lot of wood materials that we can make change. But also we are looking. I started with a colleague that I'm saying I did earlier. If you are using of wood, don't do everything 100%, because if you take by folded cross-laminated timber and you don't want to show it that you inside you see the wood, or you don't need it for the construction from the building, then don't use it. If you use some in Germany, Holzrahmenbau, in timber-frame construction, you reduce 60% of wood. If you change then to materials like wood e-leggers is like a product from Styco, then you reduce 90%. So in the construction this profile, it's like a steel profile. It's the same like by the construction in the middle, or you can also build the whole building from it, but not if you want 14 levels. So then it's not possible, but at 4 or 5 levels you can also completely in this system you can build.
2 more minutes because of the Q&A afterwards. 2 more minutes.
Okay. Next that we are using so much more, much more. Next that we are using bio-based materials and bio-based constructions. We also looking that we can use the principles from the nature that we come to buildings that don't need installations because we only need ventilation, we don't need heating, we need now aircons in the summer is because the materials don't work with you in your building. And so I'm going a little bit faster through it. And if we say open construction, inside and outside, how it works. If too much inside, then it's coming in the construction, stays a time in the construction, but then it goes outside, and sometimes if you inside need more humidity, then they give it also to inside back. So, and this water that you have in the construction, this one to have heat in the summer and take it out of the room, so you don't need aircon for the room because the materials work for you. So, and so I go a little bit more. This we can simulate, and with some programs we have also together with the Fraunhofer Institute. We can show this before we build it. That was the climate data from the last few years. There is something like this. Then we can show there's no heating, and there we don't need aircons in the summer, and we don't need ventilation. We can do it the nature way. So this one is for water in the air. This is a really nice picture from looks like from China. But every line is one of the 10 years, and from this line, coming over the red line, so everything is safe in this building with water in the air. You take innovation step, but I'm going faster. So we're looking also for innovations, IoT panels, and use water so much more, how much possible, recycling, reuse. And this is one building in Österreich that we like to bring to the Netherlands. Also, we are looking now on the climate data from Netherlands and Österreich. This is a building in Österreich without ventilation, without heating in the winter, and without air system of a ventilation system. Only this wood panels can open and close if you need fresh air inside, and you can do it as user, but you can also say, building, do it for me. So, and the building do it as well.
Where is the building located?
I think in Linz. But if you are looking for the building, the architect give the building a name, and this is 2226.
Architect Bauen. The building stands in Vorarlberg, in the most western part.
And the second one is near in Switzerland. So if we want to have it, but from our rules, from the government, it's not allowed at the moment. So we have to look for it.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That's what we are doing in the Netherlands at the moment. We try to build with light-based materials to get the CO2, the carbon footprint down.
Thank you. Are there any questions also from the participants online? Did we have any questions in the chat?
Yes. Ira asked what the building is called.
2226.
Thank you very much. It was very good. It's always great to hear someone saying all the things that I'm going around saying all the time. So it's very good to hear, especially about the vapor open. The question I want to ask you is that most of the work we do now with bio-based materials is with hemp. And we're puzzled why nobody seems to use hemp for building in Netherlands, even though you're one of the biggest producers of hemp in Europe. I'm doing buildings with hemp all over the world now. It's incredibly popular, and Netherlands seems to be the one place where it doesn't happen. And I wondered what the reason is for that.
The reason is that the big building companies only think in mineral something.
Probably the same problem in the UK, but why
only
Wenn das halt alles selber bauen.
I get this question sometimes. Can I smoke my intellect? But I don't know why. We try to change it and to communicate it to building companies. And the best it works if you show it. If you give them, give it in hands, and they can feel it, and then they begin, or they start. Oh, it's like the same, like mineral wool from glass. So and then, but it's there's another problem that they use materials. They don't know it, about the materials, and they, the builders, giving the guarantee overall. So in Germany, I know architects working together with some product companies, and they, some warranties the architect in Germany get from the product company. And I think in the Netherlands, we need that product companies from Germany, from UK, from other lands also give guarantees about materials to the building companies. But it's hard to change it. Because
but you can adopt we do adopt the approach that we heard from the previous speaker. We just do it. You don't bother about it.
I tried every time, and I like to be here today also to say, if there are product companies, they want to connect direct with some building companies, then it will be brilliant, because a lot of times there in the Netherlands, they're making business that somebody asks a producer from hemp materials in Germany, can we do it sell it exclusive on the Netherlands market? But what has happened, it will be not getting cheaper after we sell, and then you can build with it. But yeah, I think it's also the price cost from the materials, because they don't know that you can call the producer and to work directly with the producer for materials. This is not normal in the Netherlands.
You see that private homeowners do choose it, but the big companies don't.
There's
Not the big companies.
Yeah.
There's another question from the audience online.
One participant is asking how, or if you have any solutions to make bio-based materials popular. So you showed us the house in the Netherlands where people can visit and see the materials used. Are there other ways you make them popular?
We tried to do it with this pavilions, but they're coming a project now, also together with bio-based creations, that it's two pavilions. Look which plants we can use it, which region, and this they communicate on the platform lab. So as the Dutch design lab, or now it's the Floriade, representation like Bundesrat or something. But there, if you can show something to people and they can feel it, we have also 2 pilots we are built now, where people then, after the build is finished, they can come there and improve the climate inside. And yeah, you have to show it, you have to speak to them. This is also why I'm coming for natureplus here to Berlin to speak about it and tell what they are doing in the Netherlands. Because I think also we have to work all together in Europe and to show it's possible to build with some nature materials.
I think this is more of a question to everyone in the room. So for one project we really wanted to use hemp, or we wanted to use something else than mineral wool, that's usually used. And the problem was always the fireproofing technician, Brandschützer. He always said no. He said, you can't use it, it will burn down. No, you won't get approval for that. So do you have any recommendation or any idea?
Change the Brandschutz
Norm and law.
What every building company of the most traditional building companies like wood. Now it's not fire resistant, but it's more fire resistant than mineral plate or something it is, because if you want to have a fire resistant from 90 minutes, then you have to use a thicker plate. You have maybe 4 centimeter if you centimeter of wood. If you want 120, you have to 6 centimeters. So because the fire takes the first centimeter and then the ash is falling down, and then you break further and further and further, but only 1 centimeter. And this is much more volume from wood, who longer is resistant. So also, if you put hemp isolation and close it with a clay plate, clay is totally fire resistant. So if you make a package from it, then the hemp is not where you have to look for.
So there's a lot of activism needed to change the Brandschutz norms in Germany.
We have one last question from the chat. One participant is asking, did I understand correctly that whole life cycle per square meter is a requirement for construction?
In the Netherlands, yes.
In the Netherlands, it is a requirement. And is there a figure that they say it has to be like so much per square meter lifetime? Is there like a number?
You have to reach at the moment, nature coast, CO2 or something like this. They hung on all from these categories. They hung. They use something like 50 euros one ton on CO2 and something like this. And that's category 13. And then get a price square meter, and this is now at 0.8 euros. So
it's a little bit complicated, but
it's a little bit complicated. But,
at least they do it like that. If you have something like this in the Netherlands, that's an advantage I see in the Netherlands compared to Germany.
Yes.
So not everything is worse.
I think if you bring it together so that they also use all environmental product declarations in Europe on the level on the database, 26,000 EPDs on the Netherlands platform. So it will be great if to bring it together and making also maybe an European system from it.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That's a great start into the coffee break. 10 minutes from now, so meet you back at 2:45 back here for the next 2 Q&A and presentations, and then we will have another little panel discussion. Thank you very much. So more presentations. Now we have to catch up some time again. The next one is 20 minutes for the presentation, and then we have some more time. Okay, perfect. So Ralf, he's already on stage. He worked for LIGNOTREND for more than 20 years right now. And right now he's the marketing leader. And before he was 7 years in the product development there. And he is since 2020 the member of the board of the study community Holzleinbau e.V. It's very difficult to translate all these things to English. Yes, and after studying advanced marketing management and also having the diploma as an engineer at the KIT in Karlsruhe, he has a lot of experience, and I'm very happy to have him here and to hear about his view on how this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralf,
for that introduction. I wonder how do you know so much about me? But so this introduction is perfect. Yes, welcome, dear guests. It's an honor for me, of course, to present here, and I want to say first that I'm, of course, representing LIGNOTREND here, but it's not my aim to do a product presentation here, because I know that can be a little bit boring, and we are, well, a little bit suspicious. Furthermore, I want to give you some impulses on the way we think you could work with wood, because in the industry, or also the carpenters and everybody using wood, I feel they sometimes stick to a little bit old views. It was very interesting that Anupama was talking about the rectangular shapes, and well, I can go on with this because we think we should work a little bit different with wood to be somewhat, can we say, future-proof with the use of wood, and can take most contribution of wood for rethinking building. Okay. So what would be the best way of using wood in future as this renewable, very worthy resource, because it is renewable, almost the only renewable resource that is commonly being used in Europe for construction, not for insulation. So this is quite interesting. So I will go and want to sort and a little bit sort out some facts and dimensions, because this helped me to understand what is possible with wood and what perhaps is not possible doing with wood. So we should have a little look on the availability of timber or wood, of its potential for carbon storage, and I also want to compare that to other building materials, so just to give you an idea on dimensions of possible carbon storage, and perhaps sharpen the focus you all do in your activity in wood and building, of course. And I want to show, and on the end, you some chances, because the first points might sound a little bit pessimistic. What is not my character? I'm an optimist. So a little spoiler: there will be two magic words in the end that might help you to go out of the room very optimistic. And if this message arrives in your brains, I will be happy. Okay, talking about the ability, welcome, come in. Talking about the ability of wood, you will always hear there is much enough wood growing, and there is even more wood growing than we use. And many people lean back and say, well, everything is good. But we know that we need to change in building materials, so we should look a little bit in the future. Is there enough wood for that, what we plan to do, what we should do in shifting to sustainable building? Okay, little question to wake up. Thomas is a little bit distracted. So Thomas, can you imagine what this figure is about?
It's meter? No,
it's 353 meters. Does anybody have an idea what this figure stands for?
The distance of the driveway in Thomas's house.
The height of the tallest tree.
That's quite interesting. So you're approaching it. I will help you. I'm talking about a cube. And a cube of 353 meter long edges will form 44 million cubic meter of wood. This is the quantity of wood that we are using currently every year in Germany. Substantially using, because I only want to talk about that part of wood that is able to store carbon or carbon dioxide. So there's much more wood growing, but we use it for paper or for burning, so we can take that into calculation. And when I saw this, when I think about this cube, I must think, well, that's not really much, is it? So you can put this cube just beside here, and you won't even reach the Bundestag or the Spree. It's just a little cube, 353 meters high. Well, it's twice as high as the tower on the Alexanderplatz, perhaps, but it seems to be limited.
But is this the, may I just ask him,
Yeah.
Is it the amount of wood that is available, or is it the wood that is being used?
That is being used. That's
No,
next chart. I'm on the national scale.
Yeah.
It shows me that you're very into my presentation. That's good. Okay, I'm talking about the German scale, but obviously you can do that on the international scale or European scale, or look at other countries. It's just to give you an idea about dimensions. So forest inventory of 2012 gave us that number. 120 million square meters are newly growing each year. And if you see how we use it, about a third is being substantially used. And all the rest, another third, is being used for energy wood or paper industry, or much more wood that is just be burned, which we can take into account regarding carbon storage. And where is the third third? The third third is being left in the trees, which I find is in the woods, in the forest, which I find is also good, simply for ecological reasons, or we just can't get it out of the woods because it's steep mountains where this wood grows. So just keep in mind that cube, or the 44 million square meters. Some of you might say, well, that's 10 years old. Does anybody think these numbers would have significantly changed? I don't think. Let it be 5 million more or 10 million more. It's limited. Okay, so can we grow and source more wood? There are scientists on the stages that say we can build ourselves out of the climate crisis only with wood. I don't believe that. And I think, of course, there are regions, especially in Europe, Northern Europe, well, there was Russia, Ukraine, where we got much wood from, but there are many reasons where we just can't source wood. And it's a matter of international fairness if we can track all the material flow to Germany, just that we can use wood and make our building industry green and sustainable. So I would say, why not use the wood we have and take this into account. This is why I decided to talk about German figures and numbers. Okay, so let's keep in mind that a fair international distribution of material would be something ideal. Okay, second point, carbon storage. And this is a point where I always hear large numbers, millions, billions of tons, or what else that we emit, the building industry emits, and I really didn't have an imagination on dimensions and scales. This is why I tried to look at building industry in Germany again and found some numbers. So don't ask me for exact numbers, but it's approximate dimensions. we use like 55 million cubic meters of concrete each year in Germany, where we need some 30 tons of cement. So we can easily calculate that cement industry, concrete used in Germany is responsible for 18 million tons of CO2. I used to add 3 zeros behind, because this is a really large number, I think, and it's still going up here. So that's what concrete industry does. Steel is a little bit more difficult, because steel is being used in Germany for automobile production and everything. A third of the steel consumption in Germany is used in construction, and you can do the same calculation where we add 9 million tons of CO2 here. We didn't investigate on masonry, on glass, on aluminium, on all the technical applications that we install. So we have seen these charts in the morning. This is why building industry is really relevant for CO2 emission. And what does wood? Wood, as you know, is capable of store carbon, and it stores like between 900 and 1,000 kilo per square meter. So these 44 million that we substantially use, not the quantity that we burn again or use as paper, it will store 40 million tons. And this is where I understood those scientists. They don't want, okay? This is why I understood those scientists that say, okay, we can build ourselves out of the climate crisis. But now, bad news. Well, perhaps you have heard this discussion if we can take this storage into account. If a building is torn down after 50 or 100 years, CO2 will be free again. Well, let's build them so that it keeps the CO2, then it should be okay. Does anybody know the overall emissions of Germany? CO2? Any idea? I'm sorry. So everything we do here is about 20 of all our emissions. And when I saw that, so all about scales, it's not the exact numbers, but when I saw that, I was pessimistic. Of course, because, well, that's 5% of CO2 emissions. Further investigation brought me to that topic that we have another 25% of CO2 emissions. These are CO2 emissions going down at least a little bit, but so this is the third that building industry is responsible for. So energy consumption for the use of building is obviously also a high potential. And then we have a third, what we can work on. So why shouldn't we do that? And this is my optimistic side. Well, if we have a potential of 10 to 15%, so let's address this potential at least, because everybody else will also address. Does anybody know what the yellow part here is? It's very much mobility in there. Industry, everything else, our consumption here. Well, should not be our topic now, my topic, but let's work on this. Of course, let's focus on all shares. I found it very good that we had this keynote this morning where things like, what did you call it? The mindset was addressed, and it's really the most important thing, of course.
Metanoia.
Huh? Metanoia also, yes. That's my word of the week. Okay, so now we have these two numbers, and we have hopefully a little idea on these dimensions what we talk about. Now, chances and the magic words, 50% another number. I won't ask you now. 50% is the vision of many of the timber actors in Germany. 50% of buildings made from wood. It's a vision.
They want.
No, it's a vision.
But one way to do 50% in wood is to not build anything.
Yeah.
Then the wood goes up.
For example, that's a good idea. It's a really good idea. No, it's a different what I want and what is the vision. If you want to have that, I would say you're crazy, you're nuts. If it's a vision, it's okay. In my role as I'm here in Berlin with the Bund Deutscher Zimmermeister, I'm in a gremium there, and we always get the statistics on quota of timber building. In Germany, we are in residential buildings around 22% now. In commercial and public buildings, it's, I think, a little bit more. Well, let's say at the moment we're 20% of the buildings are built with timber. So I'm an engineer, she told. So I try to draw this curve, and if we go on as usual, I fear it may be knapp if I'm alive in 2016, and if I see that timber building is at 50%, we need to change something here. So now this is a matter of velocity. How can we do that quicker? How can we reach that quicker or better? And one solution for this is to use the material that's limited in a better way and build less, of course. That's another possibility. But we have to think about that this is a really big aim to do 2.5 times more than we do now. How could this leap be possible? And now, magic word number one, and this will be the only chart that follows where I match it on our products, because it's a little bit in our DNA. It's material efficiency. It's just doing the same with less material. It's not complicated at all. And I'm not more intelligent than anybody else. It's just logic. If we don't have enough, we must see how can we do more with the same material. Yes, this is the promised chart. As you know, we do CLT, but we almost never do CLT like this, because we feel it's a waste of material. We always go down to box shapes or CLT with webs, because we can reach the same amount of building part of wall, of ceiling. No, we can the same amount with half of the material, down to half of the material. And well, go back to that chart. This is almost what we need to do here, to do this, to almost double with the same material. I don't want to tell you that we're the best here. There are the yellow colleagues in the atrium who started to do the same now. We are doing it since 30 years now. For other reasons, in 1992 we did that for other reasons. Now we feel, well, it wasn't so bad, and now material efficiency fits to that. What we on a technical base are doing is that we always ask what is the performance that is needed for a building, and reduce material as possible where it's just not needed. It would take too long to give you examples for that. If we can talk about that in the break. So let's individually configure to our real needs. Magic word number 2, substitution. And here we come to carbon storage and CO2 emissions again. If we cannot store more CO2 in wood, because these 44 million cubic meters, let's say these are limited, we must look on the other building materials which emit CO2. So if we build the same number of timber buildings with wood, with half of the material, we gain material for another big share of buildings that now can be built with wood. That's substitution. So the replacement of fossil-based material, or of materials that emit CO2 in their production, in the process, is the second very simple solution. Create as much square meters from the cubic meter of raw material, and I added here where reasonable and where possible. Of course, there are products, if you look at steel, brick, that also came to material efficiency by inserting holes and everything like that. Steel, the I-beam is something material efficient. I won't talk bad about these other products, but if we can change it and replace it, it's good for the future. And the big message, or well, this is a chart I use when I talk about the timber, talk with the timber industry or the carpenters. Let's not focus on putting as much timber in one building as possible. They are so happy if they have these mass timber buildings. Oh, we use like 200 cubic meters of wood in our building. They should build as many of these buildings with wood and think about material efficiency. That's what I think is the more future-proof solution. Talking about future, I had the honor to take part in this solar decathlon Europe in Wuppertal, and these young student teams that really build demonstration buildings here on that site. I was very happy to have the next step in visibility, and the next step will be circularity. And we will now have, and we see that they now think about what do we have to do now, so in 50 or 100 years, they can possibly reuse that buildings. It's a topic that is, in my opinion, not addressed at all in industry. Even in our company, it's not really addressed. They still don't know how they should secure that in like 50 years somebody could take that material again. But this is future, and that's another aspect why I'm still optimistic, because this movement is on its way. And so we have and this, I'm sure you know this, these definitions of sustainability with also natureplus promoted it. A new definition is sufficiency, efficiency, and consistency, which I find is much better than the old this economic, ecologic, and social aspect. It's much better because this looks into the future, and the circularity topic derives from this. So more efficient, more regenerative, and if possible, reduced. That's the topic of mindset. And the last thing, that's my last chart, because I observe that people are hoping for one big solutions that solve our problems on the world. And they are pointing at each other, oh no, you messed up because you have more emissions and you have less emissions, and we can, well, Germany is so small, we are only 2% of CO2 emissions, we don't need to do that. And I think we must be aware, most of you will be aware, that this is a big puzzle with small parts. And everybody has to take his individual responsibility for that. No, the word for responsibility is
accountability.
Accountability is better. I had already written that. Accountability. This is how I want to stop with my presentation. I hope it was a little bit interesting. Maybe your expectations were a little bit different. Product talk can be made in the exhibition, and if it inspired you and gave you a little bit optimism, I am happy. Thank you.
Actually, very inspiring, and from my perspective, I learned a lot of new things about wood, and it's one of the most important materials of the future. So, are there any questions? Yes.
Always me. I want to come back to your first point, availability.
Yes.
And we all know that the climate crisis and the following consequences for wood production in Germany, for example, and that is what we count, what we have to count, not the imported wood from other sections of the world. You said perfectly right that it's a question of fairness. So we, especially the kind of wood used in construction, is a little bit on the edge. And
about spruce. Spruce, fichte.
Fichte, yeah. And my question is, what are the consequences you are thinking, perhaps on other types of wood or?
Of course. There are not only at LIGNOTREND, but there are research is being done on beech and all the other wood species, of course. Talking about spruce, there will be far enough spruce for the next 20 years, they say. 10 to 20 years should not be a problem. Some other even talk about 30 or more years. But of course, we have to rethink also that. It's possible, it's done. There are many clusters working on hardwood processing. And I can say, of course, we are also thinking about that. It will take completely different production facilities. That's what makes us difficult just to switch to beech in 2025 But you can be sure that we also think about that. That's what I can tell you. Yeah.
Many questions. Simon actually was first, so do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, very short and different aspect. You said, well, let's talk about your materials outside, but I would like to talk here very shortly about it. What I find about your materials, that like they're very beautiful, and now it comes to the point where I want to ask, do you see this as an important point to accelerate the use of wood? Because like really, if we talk about the transformation of construction, we also, I think, have to change a little bit the mind of what we like and what is beautiful, like building culture, let's say. And so do you see this as a point, like if you really offer beautiful materials, good materials, that this convince people, yeah, well, really to be creative, to change to other materials?
Of course, if I didn't, I was not allowed to work at LIGNOTREND because we are specialized on these visible surfaces. Talking about the complete timber industry, there will always be buildings where you won't see the timber, the wood, and there will be buildings where you will see it. And of course, if what's Otto-Normalverbraucher in English? the normal consumer user, if he sees the wood, it will give him something emotional so that he knows he might have done something better if he looks at a plasterboard or a concrete ceiling, of course. So talking about our products, but we are not representing the timber industry. We are only in a small niche, so we're a small company. But obviously it would be an advantage to show wood and building regulations. That is something positive. In talking about politics and building codes, building regulations allow us to show more wood even in higher story buildings. Brandschutz topic, it's beginning to get better. Since like 2015 in Baden-Württemberg and other of our states came up.
Yes, please.
I have a question regarding the availability also in continuation with what he asked. Because is there other figures for knowing how much wood should you not cut more than? Because forests have other advantages when they are not cut. I mean, they are the habitat of many people, so many species, or many other things, including microclimate. So in countries, I'm saying beyond Germany, like for instance in India or wherever rapid urbanization is taking place, what happens is that like for example, India occupies a sixth of the world's population lives in India, but they have only 2.4% of the land mass. So if the message which goes out to some countries from the European side that to use wood is a sustainable solution, in those places indeed it's very bad to cut the forests, because that's how. So is there anybody calculating when we say let's promote this material? Are they giving us limits as to beyond this you cannot cut? You know, there's
an easy principle which forestry in Germany takes to themselves. The sustainability principle comes from the forestry, as you perhaps might know, which, reduced to one sentence, tells the forest people not to take more wood out of the forest than will grow in the same time.
Okay.
So this is a principle which is common in Germany, and I would say Central Europe. And this is the reason why the forest area in Germany has indeed been going up a little bit, only a little bit. It's not significant, but it's not being reduced. This principle is 300 years old, and it's been written and defined by a guy from Saxon, who was written Saxonia, whose job was to take care that there will be enough wood for, I think, glass industry.
Okay.
So there was a completely different motivation, but he invented this sustainability principle.
It would be just interesting for the users who are romanticizing the use of wood. I've seen in our community, even especially in Europe, that I think it's good in the availability to give the realistic thing that more than this will not grow in this time, and so this is the limit.
Yes. Okay. That's what is certified by FSC and PFC, for example, which is a base for the natureplus certification, which might be a reason why LIGNOTREND could be certified 20 years ago. Yes.
So, please.
So there's a couple of issues which you may not be aware of in the UK. So firstly, following the Grenfell fire, the government has introduced new building safety regulations. And so flammable materials are not allowed in buildings over a certain height. It was 18 meters, I think they've changed it slightly. So they are, this has stopped all architects using wood in buildings. Because wood is, as we know, wood is flammable, it burns. It's kind of idiotic idea, which seems to come round about every 10 years or so. But the other big problem is that the mass timber architects have been putting flammable insulation onto the mass timber buildings. So there's one particular big pioneering development in London, which they had to close down because it actually had polystyrene insulation on top of the timber. I mean, when you consider they're using this supposedly ecological material, that seems crazy. But the other big problem is that there's a growth now in use of biomass to burn in power stations. So Drath power station, which is the biggest power station in the UK, is importing trainloads of wood pellets from the United States on a daily basis. So these huge trains traveling every day from Liverpool docks. And they are clear felling forests in Virginia and Pennsylvania and other parts of the United States to supply this, because the UK government has defined wood pellets as a renewable fuel, and so it gets subsidised by millions of pounds a day. And we have a campaign saying stop burning wood campaign, but it isn't very effective. So it is really, there are kind of quite a lot of problems, I think. We're a long way off solving some of these issues. And we're also, when we're building our hempcrete buildings, we're actually trying to reduce the amount of wood in them now, which we think we can do. Actually, the difference is quite small, but we just think it's quite an important thing to say. I'm very impressed with your statement, because there is this tendency just throw as much wood into the building as possible, and we're trying to stop doing that. So sorry, it wasn't really a question, it's more of a statement.
As we know, you
I'm
talk.
sure you don't want to tear me down, but if people tell me that there is the tendency to burn more wood, I ask them if they know how crude oil was, where it originates. So there are like millions of years where wood and plant-based biomass grew and was condensed to like layers of 100, 200 meters, where we now find crude oil. And the imagination, if if we can reach like 10 or 20 years, if we burn this wood which was grown in 50 years, that's no scale. It's just crazy. So people just must check that they have a efficiency problem, and that we must, and that's my opinion, and I'm really sure we must reduce our consumption. Build passive houses, nothing else.
Looking at the time, one more question from the digital participant.
Yes. Someone asked what kind of wood construction types or wood construction, etc., were included in the 20% figure that was shown.
Everything was that has a substantial part of wood. So there's wood framing as well as mass timber as well. There's no differentiation in that number.
Another question from the digital participant? No? There was one more question from you.
Just a small question. Did you experiment with poplar?
Not for the load-bearing purpose, but for the decorative purpose. It wasn't that famous. Yeah.
In performance or in availability? Because it's
no, in request, on request. So, well, of course, availability. LIGNOTREND needs special panels to put below our elements, and this is not available in big dimensions. So it's a decision. And what we are very successful with is the silver fir, which is in the Black Forest where we are located, which is very common and very good available. So we can source it ourselves there and work with it. It looks quite similar to poplar. And as we silver fir, Weißtanne.
Weißtanne.
And as this looks quite similar. Yeah, I know. Yes.
Fast growing.
Yeah. But you have to ask, where should that poplar be grown? Do we have sufficient fields where we could grow that, or are there major woods already where we could gain that? No, poplar is not very common, but it might be changing in the future.
In France, there is much poplar use. Okay. That's why I asked about this fast-growing. It's a question about if we grow more fast-growing, what we can storage more CO2.
Yeah. There's another competition on the land where we on the soil. What should we grow there? Poplar or corn to produce biogas, or what else?
Okay, so now
we have to stop.
The last Q&A this afternoon, and this participant will present from the screen. It is Johannes Kreißig, and he is the leading board of management of the DGNB, Deutsche Gesellschaft für nachhaltiges Bauen. Mr. Kreißig, are you here? Sorry for the delay. I hope you're still with us and happy to see you. And over to you, so we don't lose more time. Good to see you.
Hello, everybody, and I hope you can hear me quite well in the room.
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. And sorry for not being in Berlin today. So I was not able to travel, unfortunately, yesterday, and so I have to use the digital device to talk to you. Again, sorry for that. Now I try to share the screen. Let me see. I hope I will manage to do so. Now you should be able to see the screen. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Ralf already introduced a couple of topics I wanted to talk about now, but it's very nice because he's bringing real life examples to the DGNB thinking I want to introduce here. And I think the title of the session, Potential for Sustainable Building Materials and Construction Methods for Existing Buildings and Energy Efficient Refurbishment is chosen quite well, because we should talk more about existing buildings and refurbishment, because this is the only way out. We won't build or we won't solve the problem with new build. On the one hand side, since we are not fast enough in building new, and secondly, since we need ways too much material to do so. And that means that we run into a real problem with the new build. But that's the reason talking about existing building and refurbishment is quite the right thing. On the other side, to talk about the potential of the material leads me to the point that we have to talk about what do we want to achieve here, and for that to start that, I would like to take the building perspective first with the DGNB sustainability principles for buildings. These are kind of DNA modules for the building certification. What has to be done on the building level to have an appropriate evaluation level. The first point is, of course, to look for the life cycle perspective. This is one of the principles, since if we are if we are shifting the burden to other life cycle stages, we won't solve any problem. That is very clear, and we cannot shift all the burden to the future, to our kids, and therefore we have to have optimization cycle on this side, and to look for a kind of optimum here. But we will have some boundary conditions we have to look for more closely. I will come back to that. Secondly, we have to always include the holistic view. So this means that we have to use a multi-criteria assessment for these different pillars of sustainability: the environmental, the economic, and the social and cultural pillar of sustainability. Why is this important? Firstly, if it's not affordable for people and the society to build in this way, in a specific way, we won't achieve the mass effect we need for our sustainability goals. That means we have to bring the affordability into balance here. That does not mean that everything has to be as cheap as possible. This is not the issue, but we have to look for a balance that for the target audience, the product, so to say, or living and housing is affordable. Otherwise, people will use still the old unrenovated flats. Why do we need the social and cultural pillar as well? I mean, if we build buildings which are not accepted by the society will take care that they go away, and therefore we will never achieve the service life or the lifespan for these buildings we should have. We should build buildings almost forever. If we talk in life cycle assessment about reference service life, this is just a calculation thing. It's a reference. It's not the estimated or target service life. So this is one point on the social side. But the others aspect on the social side is the health of the people. If we build unhealthy buildings, this will lead to major renovation if we are lucky, or to pull down the buildings too early anyway. And we have done in the past too many mistakes. So there are many examples how not to work, and therefore we have to take care on these two pillars, and economically the economic pillar and the social and cultural pillar as well. On the environmental side, there are a couple of issues urgent in parallel, but most of them are somehow linked to climate change directly and indirectly. So we have to make sure that that we address them in a sufficient way. So if we talk about resources, water, if we talk about biodiversity, there's a strong link to climate change. So this is a holistic view, which is very important when talking about sustainable buildings. And last but not least, this is more a topic for the process. We should look for performance-based optimization. So we have to define the target, what we want to achieve, and not to define the measure, what people have to do directly, because otherwise we will kill innovation, and we will still need innovation in the future. Not everything is invented up to now. So with these three key principles of sustainability assessment, I want to start the discussion. But these are principles we have implemented today also in the criteria catalog. And when we talk now about potentials for sustainable materials, we are talking about future. And that means we should also check what will change in the future. And for that reason, in DGNB, we have started a future project of checking what will be certification criteria in 2030. We call it our DGNB version 2030 project. So to give guidance to designers and architects today, what they have to expect in 2030, and buildings which will finish in 2030, at least the big ones, will be started to design latest in a couple of years, so in maybe 24 or 25 latest. And that means we have to be very quick in understanding how this will change. For that reason, we have discussed and defined so-called transformation topics, which are the fundament of the future certification framework of DGNB. And here I want to go in there because some of them are really important for products and for materials. The first one, energy and climate, is clearly very important. We have already discussed that we have to slow down climate change quickly. And but in the same way, we have to support the transition of the energy system, because we will always need energy. This is not the problem as such, but without an energy system which can support the building sector with renewable energy, we will be into trouble. That's clear. So we won't have autark houses, self sourcing all the energy on the plot. You can do that on the countryside with small buildings, but you cannot do that in dense structures in the cities. Secondly, very important for the future are open spaces and ecosystems. These are topics we have not looked intensive enough in the past. So we looked very deep into the building itself and what's going on there, but the effect of the building on the environment and vice versa, we didn't study deep enough. And therefore, we have to look more intensive into this, and keywords like biodiversity are linked to here. So also buildings have to support the preservation and creation of natural spaces and productive ecosystems. So this is not a problem that we have either an ecosystem or a building. We have to combine it and have to have a harmonic living together, so to say. third one is sufficiency. When we today talk about needs, we have maybe the wrong mindset in there. Our need philosophy in our society is always growth driven, and we have more to look in the future what we can afford from a carbon perspective, for example. And that means we have to think about how to fulfill the quality standards we have today with less. This is possible to do so, but it's a different thinking in design and in construction, but also in production of construction products. To give an example, if you think about standard brick, which is used in a wall or in a ceiling, let's look for a ceiling. You have this nice ceiling systems with bricks where you have beams and bricks in between. It's not necessary that all of this is brick, which is burned. It could be also a different structure, a different clay structure you bring in there, or in the wall, for example. Not everything has to be a burnt brick. And if you combine it, like people did 100, 300 years ago, you will find a different way of building without losing quality standards. Fourth topic are materials itself. The use of materials in a circular, healthy way, which are produced ethically correct, is kind of prerequisite in our understanding. So this is not something we can trade against carbon, less carbon or something like that, because in the end, we are not fulfilling the assumptions anymore for the service life, and therefore we have to make sure that we exclude all the materials from our market which do not fulfill these requirements. And the regulatory requirements today are not strict enough to fulfill all of this. Fifth is resilience. Since climate change is not a future thing, it's already happening, and we see more and more floodings and heavy rain and storm and whatever. We have to rebuild our existing infrastructure, our existing buildings in a way that they are more resilient according to the changing environment. And therefore, the structures have to be robust, self-supporting, adaptive, and prepared for changes. We do not know everything what will happen, and therefore we should have here more flexibility in there. This resilience is one of the biggest issues because if we do not take care here, we are losing a lot of investment of our society, and this typically leads to a lot of more activities, which leads to other carbon emissions. Therefore, resilience should be one of the key topics when changing infrastructure or buildings or for new builds anyway. So a check of these aspects in every project should be a prerequisite. And if you look into the sustainable finance criteria you have heard today in the morning, then you can find this resilience criteria in there. Baukultur, what a German word. I did not know an English word for that. Maybe it's also Baukultur, like kindergarten or something like that. We have to promote. We have to promote design for our living spaces, because we we need the acceptance of the society, of the people. We have to make sure that people love their buildings and the built environment. Then they will take care and they will do everything to keep them in operation. Therefore, this is a key element which is underestimated in the past pretty much. The qualities of the habitat around is another aspect. Our society is changing rapidly. It's not only getting older, also more diverse, and therefore we have to create the built environment for all parts of our society, and therefore we have to think what will change in the future. And we have to include it in every project as well. Do we need an elevator, for example, or another option to have wheelchair able access to the housing and things like that? Should be a key element everywhere. And last but not least, mobility. If we think buildings independently of mobility and what we do or what we work and where we work and how we live, then we are losing a part of the potential we could solve if we think the sectors together. So these are the 8 transformation topics, but not all of them are, of course, relevant for the materials. The key element for the materials is definitely climate change and energy. Then the prerequisites for the materials and the resilience part. And since the materials part and the resilience part is kind of a prerequisite we have to look for, I would like to focus on the climate change now in the next couple of minutes. And you have seen that definitely many times today, that we have a high emergency, extreme weather events becoming more and more intensive and frequent and so on. And if you look in the IPCC 6th assessment report, then it says clearly we need rapid, immediate and large-scale reductions. And I think the key word in there is rapid. It's not a concept what we could do in 50 years. So, to build structures today and say, okay, that will be very good in 50 years is maybe not good enough. And this is why I said in the beginning about the life cycle perspective. We have to include the life cycle perspective, but we have maybe to tune it and to look more for the upfront emissions in this story, that we are still on the pathway down to the 1.5 or 2 degrees, because talking about 1.5 or 2 degrees goal, this is now not a German, it's a global figure, but we can see here the flattening of the curve is basically because of Corona and things like that. If we do business as usual, it will go up and up and up in the future. If we look for the current policies and the current pledges and targets, we will see that it will stop the growth, but it won't bring down the curve to a 1.5 or 2 degree target, which means we have to do ways more than we are doing globally. And the comment in the session before about what should we do in India, construction to build with wood is not the solution in a country like India. It's completely clear. So we have to give answers in a way which are compatible to the boundary conditions of the country. Coming back to the carbon emissions of the building and the building life cycle, if we look in, we see that building materials. So what do we include? We include the production of the building materials and construction and building of the building, of course, the replacement, the building operation, and disposal and recycling. And in this field, so we have 2 big blocks. So the first one is building operation, like it was said before, and I just put together the other into its construction related. And if you look into the DGNB reference building in the certification scheme, we see that we have a 30% construction, 70% operation within this reference building as a reference. And why is it so? Because it was state of the art, or is state of the art still. We are not good enough in operation with what we are building today with a 50-year reference service life. If we go into efficiency house 40 standard, which is, I would say quite good today from a building envelope point of view, but it's not only building envelope. Then we have a 50-50 relation between construction and operation, and we're coming more to the point where we should be. Because in operation in the future, we have the innovation issue where we will have a better solution in the future. The 50% of the construction is spent today if we have a new build. If we talk about an existing building, of course, this is already existing. So talking about renovation, we have to look maybe for 1/3 of this, because 2/3 in there is the building structure as such. So if we renovate the building, we can already bring down a lot of this carbon emission. For that reason, we have defined in the framework for carbon neutral buildings so-called focus areas for optimization of the operation and of the construction stage. And I would like to start with the operational phase, because here it becomes clear that we cannot give one answer to all the building. The first focus area is the local context. If we talk about existing building, this is not accessible because the building is already there. So we won't change the surrounding of the building to have a better local context. Secondly is the building envelope, and this is one of the very critical ones in the existing building stock. We still have about 7 million buildings built before 1979 in Germany. That means before any energy performance requirement was existing in Germany. That means here is a high share of the building stock where we have to work on, which is from a building envelope point of view, not good enough to work in the future. 7 million building is a lot, and here we have to optimize. But there are instruments existing, but we are not fast enough. So we have to bring up the renovation percentage. Second focus area is the user energy. In the Gebäudeenergiegesetz, so the building energy law in Germany, we have the problem that the user energy is not included, but we have to bring it in because it's important, an important share. The more we bring down operational energy, the more important user energy is for in the whole context. And if we are looking into the QNG, the quality mark for sustainable buildings, published by the ministry about a year ago, then you can see that the user energy is already included in this calculation criteria there, which is a basis for subsidies from KfW.
Sorry for interrupting. Can you slowly but surely come to an end, because we have to keep the timetable a little bit? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Second last slide.
Perfect.
The energy system is also important, because the question where does the energy come from is critical. Because if we have renewable energy from a renewable system, it's completely different than heating with fossil fuel. And therefore, we have to bring that in the optimization equation. And the same, the production of renewable energy on site, where the question, if we have options, very often in rural areas, more critical in the cities. So here we can see this focus areas we have to look for when doing optimization. I was cheating. It's not the second last, but the third last slide. This is the result of a study we did about the emissions from building components in new buildings, only from the construction stage. And here you can see that there's a high variance between almost 0 and 15, more than 15 kilogram CO2 per square meter year, with a median, an average of 8.8 kilogram. And that means the way how the building is designed and built is relevant. And that means if we can bring down the 8.8, either by the use of low carbon material or by using existing building stock, we are working in the right direction. And for this part, we have also this focus area. And here, key element are the last two ones. So low material consumption that was discussed before in the panel, and the low CO2 intensity of the material. This is not necessarily wood. It could also bring down carbon emission from other materials, but the problem is that it's not available on large scale today. So in theory, you can do steel with hydrogen from renewable energy, but you neither have the renewable energy in a big enough amount, nor you have the facilities in place for that. That means you need at least another 5 to 10 years to have the first material in place. And if we look at the slide, we were discussing about the emergency, that might be not fast enough. So the conclusion out of it is clearly, we have to think if we can build as much as we do, we have to use the existing building stock. And when using material, we have to think about using less material and to use low carbon material.
Thank you very much. We will end this conference at the end quite on time. We will do two things, because we learned leaving out things is very important. We will leave out the intermediate break that was planned, because we will have a break in quite some minutes, only 10 minutes left. And we will do now the discussion round. So I ask all the people who had their presentations before up here on the stage, and you have to help me a little bit to make it happen. Thank you very much. And just really doing a little wrap up all together of what we just heard and what are the commonalities we might have discovered. So one thing I have taken with me is sometimes it's a very good idea to leave things out, to just let it be. And we saw that about the wood construction. We just heard it from Mr. Kreißig, and I think that's something that combines all of us. Also what you said, why don't we just let the trees grow? And that could also be the carbon, the carbon speicher. And I think that's storage. Thank you very much. The carbon stuff. So if we try to find out more commonalities, what is your takeaway from that, from everything you heard? What is it what we can take from this afternoon, where we think it's just, we can break it down to simple principles, what we need to do, because we've heard so much, but sometimes we need to try to simplify it. Would be very good to hear from you, Max.
Yeah. I heard a lot of CO2 biogenic storage in wood. but I think there are a lot of more materials in buildings. They storage much more than only the wood construction. So if we put it together, then we have completely other amounts of CO2 in the construction and in the materials together. And then, because I also think we have to use so less as possible wood, and only I had it also in my presentation. If you construct something without cross-laminated timber, where you need a lot of wood for, then use it only as a construction, and then you can take where you don't need the construction from CLT, or you don't want to see it, then you can reduce in the construction wood with 90% and use other plant bio-based materials to compensate or to storage CO2. And another point, I think we forget, every time we are looking for a period maybe of 50 years from a building or something like this, maybe we have to think, so as 100 years ago, that the building can also place for again 200 or 400 years. So we are in the building sector in the Netherlands, I heard every time a wood building no longer than 40 years, and then we have to break it down. So, but I think there are wood buildings, and they stand there hundreds of years. So, we have to think back that we not only built for 40 years, but built for again 200, 400 years. And then we don't have that after 40 years, the CO2 comes back in the nature.
That's a very good point. And from everything you've learned in India, what would you like to take to German construction practices? What would be the most efficient from your perspective?
I think the thing I would like to share, and also what I'm taking back from here, is about the codes police, actually. Because to what extent the codes which we've created are preventing true innovation, and we all know it, that we know they are there for a good reason, but do we really know it? I mean, can we narrow it down to what is the good reason and be very aware of how it is blocking innovation and slowing down innovation? It is discouraging people to even begin. I see young students like Clara here, who has just joined our office, as an intern, and I just find it so, what to tell them, because the society they grew up in compared to the society I grew up in is very different. So their society is telling them not to do innovation. Their society is telling them it is not practical if you use your own mind. Their society is constantly feeding them from kindergarten onwards. This is how it is done. This is how it is done. This is how it is done. And I grew up, I didn't think I would have so much to offer, because we are, the other countries are colonized by this kind of thought. So now they are also confused about whom they should listen to. And I feel whoever our old civilization, they know something about sustaining. And we know that these habits, Germany was not always like this. We very well know it is 50 years, 100 years, even up until Bauhaus, there was so much innovation happening. Each time somebody had a good idea, there wasn't a codes police coming and say, stop, stop, stop. Okay, maybe later in the practice, before you start a company, you don't get a permission. But when you're a student, when you're a child, why are we indoctrinating people to not imagine anything different than what is going on? So I want to tell them that there is a whole world out there, and those people have also survived. And there is also a branch, so the same danger of fire exists here and there. The same force of gravity exists here and there. So if a brick volt, it stands in my country, it will stand here too. It's not that we are all Homo sapiens. We are all made of the same intelligence and the same DNA. And all we have to make, to just conclude, I would say, please, if you are so obedient people by nature, and so rebellious also by nature, let's change. Let's not be obedient. Let's be obedient to the laws of nature, to the laws of physics, like gravity. Don't question. And here are students who are questioning the law of gravity when they design structures. You should look at what our students design sometime. They are questioning the deep laws of nature and rebellious to that, and obedient to the building codes made by humans. I would say question human laws, surrender to natural laws.
Mr. Harder, what would you do if you could be rebellious?
I was prepared for an answer to what to leave out.
Sorry, you can say that.
Maybe this is the same. I sometimes think about we just could leave out one half of anything. So one half of material, that's my profession. We could live, I think we could perfectly live if we had houses half as big. If we eat meat, only the half of the meat. If in Corona I drove to the office only half of the time and I did home office the other half of the time. So regarding the DGNB local context topics, so there were less driving, and I think we would have reached very much if we went down to just half of everything. And we will get time. Anupama proposed this resource. We will get much time to do something better. This is a little bit philosophical, but perhaps rebellious also.
Yes. Do you think we would use it for good, the time we gain?
Me? Oh, thank you.
You would, yeah.
I would, of course.
Would everyone out there, or would they just...
Everybody can try.
I would back him so much, because I do think everybody will be a little better, because when you are very strained and stressed and you don't have time to breathe, you become aggressive and you disturb everybody around you. But if you suddenly become relaxed, maybe you will be less creating some problem to other people.
More mindful, yeah. Mr. Kreißig, what do you think we can leave out more from your perspective?
I think, in addition to what we have discussed, we should leave out that we always make everything new instead of repairing it. Repairability is a key issue in the future, and we have to expand the service life of what we have. Because if we design everything new for the future, somewhere in 50 years, it's too late. And in context with that, we have to build more simple, because one of the problems of not existing repairability is that it's too complex. I mean, look into modern building, look into the HVAC systems we have and so on. This is a nightmare. They do not work in the way they should. Just a few people are able to somehow install them and bring them into work. And in the end, they have a service life of, I mean, maybe 15 or 20 years. And what's then?
That's a very good answer. Leaving things out, leaving 50% out. We should try that on a daily basis. It will be painful, probably, in the beginning, but we will earn a lot. Any last word from any one of you?
No, I think it's just to say thanks. It was a really, really interesting getting together, and I really appreciate your point about how I think to collaborate is the future. In architecture especially, we have the another culture I question, which is competition. instead, if we would do collaboration to raise the standard, we help each other. Whatever we don't know, somebody knows it, you know.
Yes, that's very powerful.
It's really good what you say about yeah, all the rules, definitions, and so something we have is a problem because if I want to reduce installations in my building, then I don't. The government don't agree.
Yeah.
So I want to use nature ventilation systems, but it's not allowed any longer.
We could leave out half of the regulations.
Yes, I thought of that.
Leave out half of the
regulations.
And double the cooperation.
But I hope the good half.
Yeah, somebody has to choose which.
That's very good. And then between two countries, also regulations in Germany and regulations in the Netherlands.
There you can, in our country, you can create some regulations.
Some products you can use in Germany, it's not allowed in the Netherlands because they are saying the firewood system in Germany is
fire burns different. Yeah.
So it's very interesting,
it's
you know.
Like gravity is also
because
different.
You asked about codes, you know, earlier. I just want to give you an example that we are not just rebellious about the codes, but I'm sorry, sometimes we notice if there is ignorance behind a code. So we have to point out as a thinking being, one of our water engineers, Harald Kraft, based in Berlin, he was not allowed to use the Abwasser. He was not allowed to do because of a code, because you are forced to give your water, storm water, to the government. And if you want, he did a project finally in Kreißig, and he used to do projects in India and Africa and China so that he can get to do what Germany doesn't let him do, which he knows how to do. So there are many technologies people know how to do, but the codes don't let them. So what you make, it makes you. And the more and more we don't allow to make, we lose the ability to be firsthand, you know, engaging with the problem also. And that's my real hope also, because now then they managed after 20 years to update the code. So while we like it, let us know that like everything else, our society is in evolution and the human consciousness is in evolution. So one of the things that needs to evolve is the codes or people who police others from doing good.
Yes.
Maybe one remark. Can I do a remark regarding the codes?
You have the last word. You have the last
I'm sorry if I said anything very irreverent.
One last remark regarding the codes. The problem is very often not the code itself, it's the way we use the codes. And this is a problem of our law system. And this means we have to work together between designer and builder and investor in a different way. Because today the designer, the architect, has to fulfill the highest level in the code. Otherwise, the risk is too high that somebody will sue him later on. And this is completely ridiculous, because this is the reason very often why people do waste too much. And therefore, it's not only the code itself. And maybe second remark, which is maybe more critical.
Last sentence, Mr. Kreißig. Sorry, but
okay.
One or maximum 2 sentences. Say it, because what you say is very valuable.
We have to think more global, because in the end we have built so much knowledge here, and we have to export this knowledge, not to sell it. We have to give it where it's usable, and people globally have to decide if they can use it and how they can use it. We should not tell people how to do it, but we should give the technology and the ideas and the instruments for free for everybody. Because
yes, thank you so much.
Thank
you. So up to the break, very valuable discussion. Thank you to everyone who joined online, who kept who stayed in the meeting until now. Thank you so much. Very valuable. And we will meet back at 4:30 at the upper floor in the meeting room we were starting today. Thank you all.
Thank you.